So the name of the camp is Geospatial Skills Camps for Rural Montana Youth. We'll explain in a little bit kind of what we mean more by geospatial skills. But the program was funded by the Air Force Office of Scientific Research, and it's hosted at Montana State University by the Science Math Resource Center in the Department of Education and then the Department of Earth Sciences. I wanted to introduce you really quickly to our team. So I'm Susie Taylor. I'm director of the Science Math Resource Center. Jeannie Chips is here, also with SMRC, and then Julia Wente is here, also with Science Math Resource Center. Beth Nelson is from the Earth Sciences Department, and Nick Lux is in the Department of Education. We have a brand new team member, Maida Napton, who's a student in the Department of Earth Sciences. She's going to be fantastic, and you will definitely get to meet her along the way. So here's just some overall goals. We really wanted to think about the benefits to both the students and the educators who are part of the program. So for the community educators, there's the opportunity to really get some high quality professional development and ongoing support for hosting the camp in your community. We are eager to build a cohort of those educators. We're going to fund camps in 5 communities. You'll all be trained together, you'll get to know one another, and although each camp will be different depending on what your community is like, hopefully you'll get the chance to know and support one another and then really create some long-term connections between one another and also with us at MSU. For the students, our goal is to provide STEM outreach and workforce relevant skills, especially that are relevant for rural Montana kids. We want to engage and inspire youth to consider careers and studies in STEM and introduce them to some cool new topics and fields in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Our goal is to connect geospatial skills and topics. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by that to what's locally relevant for you. We want to connect them to future job opportunities for students and really help connect them with community role models and mentors. We will introduce youth to STEM professionals and other organizations that can support them. And then really a high goal for our camp is to reach kids who may not have had an opportunity like this before. So that's where we will really rely on you out in the communities to know who could really benefit from this kind of camp and who maybe hasn't had a chance to go off and do some fancy expensive camp at MSU. So we will be selecting 5 sites across Montana, and this is what you'll receive. We will be developing the full camp curriculum and share that with you. There'll be 8 or more hours of educator training. If you're interested in getting OPI renewal units or continuing education units, we can provide those for you. Like I said, you'll be part of a cohort with other Montana educators. You will get a pretty massive kit of STEM equipment and supplies that are yours to keep. Some of them you'll use during the camp, but a lot of the tools and the equipment, you'll just get to keep them and use them for future activities. You might even want to run the camp again at another time. We will provide you with a budget of up to $4,000. It's pretty flexible in how you use that. You can pay staff, buy meals and snacks. You can help kids with transportation to and from camp. You can pay for a room rental if you need to. There's a small budget for recruiting kids, and I probably shouldn't have made that separate. It was just how I wrote the grant. It was separate, but you can use that if you need to print posters or do something on social media. It's basically just a little pot of money that can help you recruit some students. You'll have ongoing support from MSU from basically January when our applicants are accepted all the way up through the week of the camp. We will be helping to schedule some guest speakers. That some of them will be from MSU, including some cool students that your students will probably like to meet. And then we'll have guest speakers from NASA, USGS, the Air Force, and other organizations like that. We also have an incentive for the students who complete the camp. And really that's just, to keep kids engaged throughout the week. They'll get some STEM equipment to keep for themselves when they're done. And then lastly, we will be doing a GIS day at MSU next August. We haven't set the date yet. We'll actually work with you to figure out when that date should be. And we'll have travel funding for 1 educator and 2 students from your camp to attend that day. I'm saying that 1 educator and 2 students because that's kind of how we built the budget. But if you want to be frugal and stretch that budget to bring a few more kids, that would totally be up to you. We just kind of had a beefy budget for 3 people. Here's a little bit more logistics. So the week of the camp is June 10th through 14th. Unfortunately, that's not flexible, and that's because we need to be on staff to support you, and we'll be scheduling those guest speakers. So the camp will run Monday through Friday on that week. We will ask you to do a full day each of those days, and Jeannie will tell you a little bit more about what that schedule will look like. We will ask you to recruit a minimum of 5 students. And again, we hope that you look for kids who maybe have not had an opportunity like this before. We'll ask you to provide meals and snacks and help kids with transportation if they need it. That's what you'll use your budget for. We do have a few technology requirements, and Beth will tell you about those. And then we will ask you to use the camp curriculum that we will create for you. And I'm going to turn it over to Jeannie, who will tell you a little bit more about the curriculum and what that looks like.
Awesome. Thanks, Susie. So our curriculum really is designed for rising 9th and 10th graders. So while we recognize that many of you might serve other populations or age levels, we're going to be trying to narrow down activities that might require a little bit more experience with some technology than younger kids might have. But it's again not meant to be like super high level. We just do want to ensure that we're doing rising 9th and 10th graders. We are trying to build in as much as we can local flexibility, and I'll show you what this looks like in a couple of slides when we look at what the daily schedule might look like. And we are going to be providing, as Susie mentioned, virtual guest speakers, but we'd really love for you to have at least one local, like in-person guest speaker. It's great if there's someone in the community, but if it's someone relatively nearby, that would work as well, because we want them to have the ability to see from far away, but also in person. So this is a bit of an overview of the curriculum. The first note is to really emphasize that we do not expect you to have prior geospatial skills. If you do, that's awesome, but we're intending to build this curriculum in a way that it's we can train you as geospatial camp educators. So that's really exciting. A desire to learn cool tech would be helpful, and maybe a joy in using maps. That would be awesome, because those are the things that kind of come up a lot when you see geospatial skills. We are developing the curriculum ourselves, but we're trying to build in customization, and then we're trying to, from the beginning, build it upon a local problem or a topic that you identify. So you'll see in the application itself, we get you to start thinking about, are there local issues you think students would be interested in learning more about? We've also got a survey out there in the field right now for geospatial professionals. And this is some of the top responses as of a couple of days ago, and already we've had more responses since I took this picture. So what they're saying is data, 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 tools, computers, new technology, all of that stuff. So, but it's going to be a lot about maps and data and using technology. So that's a little bit of an overview. Now the fine details, what's this really going to look like? So we'll start out with a 1-hour introductory session in February, and that's really to get to know everyone, get an introduction again to like the deeper aspects of the program. You'll hear more about the curriculum in February. Then we're going to have some even deeper dives in March and May. That's half-day virtual workshops. And that's where we're going to really have you engage in some of the activities, have you work on some of the same things that you'll be working through with your students. And then we'll also be there for you in the couple of weeks prior to the camp, because those last few weeks before camp starts are of course stressful and things come up that you couldn't have predicted. So we'll be there for you if you need it. And then we will coordinate virtual guest speakers each day of the camp. We included like a sample camp schedule. So this, like Susie mentioned, this is like a rough schedule, and it might change a little bit based on the geospatial professionals' availability, the needs of your own community. But our thoughts were that it would start about 9, and then the first half hour is really going to be a hands-on activity that all camps do that sort of like situate our experience. And then after those hands-on activities, we're going to go into the virtual sessions where you might hear about someone who's doing work related to that hands-on activity, or you might hear someone who's talking about how they engage with data, and then the students are going to be working on that data and their own technology, their own computers, alongside the geospatial professional. We've mapped out like a little bit of idea of what the topics might be. So starting with like big picture, what are geospatial skills? What's geospatial thinking? Going into like mission planning, how do you think through like gathering this data and collecting things? Maps, aerial imagery, data collection techniques, and then remote sensing. So those are some general ideas. We're kind of narrowing it down in part based on what the survey is telling us from geospatial professionals, and we'll also do a little bit more narrowing it down once we hear from you. So after we have those morning sessions, we do want you to provide lunch for each camper, and again, that's in the budget. And then in the afternoon, it's going to be a little bit more customizable. So we'll have a little bit more options so that you can have students dive into the local community issues a bit more, maybe bring in even more community speakers. Or if your students are really interested and want to get a deep dive into the technology, then we'll have activities that can support them going deeper into the technology. So it's going to be like, what do you and your students feel will be the best for your community? So that's about it for the camp.
Okay, and then Beth is going to share a little bit about what we'll ask you to provide technology-wise for the students.
Hey everybody, I'm Beth. I'm a geographer, and I was asked to participate in this grant to come up with some of the activities that we would be doing with students. So as we've been brainstorming about how can we make this as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, we've really kind of narrowed it down to like one thing that we need, and that's internet access. So we've got a lot of sort of the secondary questions after that, but as long as all students will have access to the internet, that's where we will start to develop the types of activities that can be completed. So if we have students with Chromebooks or laptops or desktops or cell phones, those are all, we can do geospatial activities on all of those, but for each camp, so each of the 5 places, it's best if we can find one device that everybody has, whatever that is, so that we can create activities for each specific place-based camp that the students are doing the same thing with one another on these devices. And again, it can be any of the possible devices. And we've listed just sort of the usual suspects here. I've got a couple of images here for possible ways to collect data. If students do have access to an iPad or to a like an iPhone, we can download ArcGIS field maps, which is a fun way to let students, I mean, and they probably will be better at cell phones than any of the rest of us, but they can go out into their local communities and collect real-time data that we can then put into maps. And if then, or aside from that, ArcGIS Online is easily accessible, whether we just have desktops or laptops or Chromebooks, that students can just hop online and then do stuff within some of the software that GIS professionals use. There is a third component later that if desirable, we certainly can use this, and that's to use the ArcGIS program itself. And that is sort of a pie in the sky dream of what we might be able to do at this camp. So again, internet access, yes, please. Everything else, let's see how it goes, and we will create curriculum design for each specific group of technology accessibility items, but then also with the knowledge and interest and curiosity in each of those places.
Awesome, thanks, Beth. I have just 2 last slides, and this will kind of tell you about who's eligible to apply and then what that application process looks like. So first and foremost, we need an organization to apply, not an individual. And that's basically for the exchange of the funds from MSU. So it can't just go to a person, it has to go to a library or a school or a Boys and Girls Club, some sort of organization. That organization will be responsible for receiving those funds. and using them appropriately. There are a few things that you can't buy, but for the most part, it's pretty flexible. The organization will be responsible for the overall hosting of the camp, including ensuring safety of the participants, the access to technology, like Beth mentioned, and then overall accessibility, especially if a student needs some support to attend the camp. I'm sorry, my cats are in the background. And then that organization, we would ask them to submit a report to MSU so we know how everything is going. So the organization may already have staff who can do the camp, or they can contract with a teacher or somebody else in the community. That's totally up to you. You would be responsible for using that budget to support the people to run the camp. And then the last slide here is just a little bit about the process. The applications are due on December 22nd. You would apply online through the website. There is one small additional thing you have to do. We couldn't make the online application accept the budget. So we have that as a spreadsheet that you would fill out and upload. It's pretty small. We're basically just asking, how would you use the money? And we have a few suggested categories, but that's pretty flexible for you. The application must be submitted by a representative of the organization that will ultimately receive the funds. So that person is kind of responsible for all of that. However, the person who's actually running the camp, the lead educator, might be somebody different. So I did want to note that there's a section in the application where we ask about the lead educator. That person can submit a resume or describe their qualifications. And we do ask for a personal statement from that person. So it might be the same person, the person who's responsible for the organization and submitting the application, or it might be a different person, but we wanted to note that so you don't wait until the last minute to connect all those dots. The application is not that long, but I would encourage you to look at it ahead of time. You can download it in a Word doc or a PDF, just so you can see what all those questions are and kind of be prepared, but then you would submit it online. We'll start reviewing them right away, and we will let people know no later than January 31st, hopefully before that. And then lastly, I have our email there. That's for Science Math Resource Center, SMRC at montana.edu. We'll put that in the chat in just a minute, but if you have any questions anywhere along the way, you can always email us. So I'm going to stop sharing and just see if people have any questions. You can use the chat or you can unmute, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.